Welcome to another Lombardi Live. My guest tonight is as creative about his drum set as he is playing it. But when he gets behind the kit, it makes perfect sense to me. I think he orchestrates what he plays, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to get into that very much in detail. He's also on the cover of Modern Drummer magazine, and he's live right here. Daru Jones, thank you for joining me.
How you doing, Dom? Thanks for having me on the show.
Look forward to catching up. You're probably tired of answering this question, but I've got to bring it up because it's from an educational standpoint, I think, important. And I usually can't bring it up because guys don't do it. But the angle of your snare drum, I have always been taught, is the most correct way it should be. And that goes from Freddie Gruber, looking at Buddy Rich, looking at all the legendary teachers of the old days. And I'll tell you why they told me that, but you tell me why it feels good to you.
That's a good question. Those names that you mentioned, it's definitely a tribute, to those guys, and also Philly Joe Jones, Gene Krupa. When I got exposed, to the jazz drummers, that's what I noticed, that they all played with the snare drum tilted, and then I started finding out about other drummers, like Philly Joe Jones would go take it beyond, and he would tilt some of his drums as well. So yeah, I think those drummers, they played the traditional grip. As you know, there's two grips. There's a match grip where everything is the same on both sides. Then there's the traditional grip where, the folk, the grip is different. It's the jazzier grip. And I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I know like guys like Steve Gadd, they kind of had that marching setup where the snare drum, it matched the actual grip. So they, they played it. Let me give you an example. So this the traditional grip is this way. So by the grip being like this, the drum matched the aesthetic, of the grip. So they played it, tilted sideways, So it's definitely a tribute, to those drummers that I saw do that. And then I just try to figure out a way, how could I take what they did and take it further? So instead of doing it sideways, I turned the snare drum so it looked like a hill going down. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, that's definitely in tribute, where that angle, the angle started from.
Yeah,
yes,
historically,
sir.
I think it even goes back to the marching idea of you're carrying a drum off of your shoulder, and it's going to be hanging at that angle, and you would play with what, I mean, it's kind of funny now because we call it the traditional grip. Pretty soon there's going to be a few generations where this has got to be the traditional because it's 90% of what people do. So we'll call this the jazz grip, but right now that is called the traditional grip. But the other thing Freddie explained to me, Freddie Gruber I'm talking about, in the years I studied with him and having conversations with Louis Bellson years ago also, if you were to take a ball and put it on the end of a rubber band, if you will, or a string, and you were to fling it just like you made your arm motion, so the ball would hit the snare drum. If the snare drum is angled towards you, the ball will bounce off to the side. Because it's coming into something that's like that, and it's going to bounce and go a little bit sideways. If it's at an angle, it's in the same arc as the trajectory of your arm and the stick, so it'll bounce and come straight back. So the idea was, if you're totally loose, which you are, and allowing the stick to bounce, which you allow it to, I challenge people to try it a little bit. Maybe tip your snare drum level at least, right? Or even maybe at a little bit angle going the other way, and see how it feels.
Yeah, it's as far as my setup, it's a lot that goes into it because I sit up really high, and when you look at the drum kit by itself, it looks unorthodox. But it works out, for how I sit. I sit really high, and the angles are going down, so it just works. I don't really have to move that much, except the toms, because the floor tom that I have in front of me now is deep. When I started becoming a hip hop drummer, and I downsized my drum kit, similar to Questlove kit. He just had a snare drum, floor tom, and the bass drum. And I was like, man, how could I take this configuration and make it my own? Because I didn't want to just have a carbon, have my kit look like his. In the hip hop community, it's all about having an identity and being original. So I never want to be in the same room with Quest, and he'd be like, I don't want to have any problems of like trying to jack his steez. So I had to figure out, how could I, now that I'm playing less drums, because the music that I'm playing hip hop, it don't require a lot of fills. It's just require playing these loops in tribute to Clyde Stubblefield Jabo. When you listen to those producers that produced those sample breaks where they would sample, James Brown, funky drummer, Bernard Purdy, Rocksteady, they were just these continuous loops. So I started becoming, the next hip hop drummer outside of Questlove, and there's others out there that's playing hip hop. But like as far as like the upper echelon, and when I downsized my kit, I was like, man, how could I take that configuration and make it my own. So I started with snare drum. I took the snare drum first, which had an angle, but instead of doing it sideways, I made it look like a hill. And then one day I woke up, I was like, man, what would happen if I do the floor tom? So really, to make a long story short, my drum kit setup with the angles was for looks, just so I can have an identity, and my drum kit would look like Questlove. Then I had to figure out how to play it. I had to figure out how to change my vocabulary. But yeah, you can continue on.
Yeah, no, I mean, it always has appeared to me, you orchestrate what you play. And maybe because the drums are in a position where you have to not work harder to get to them, but where they're not as naturally part of your normal body motion, you'd have to make the mental, I mean, it's your mind that's going to tell your hands what to do. You'd make the mental note that you're going to go play that tom-tom, which makes it less tom fills maybe than a drummer normally would play.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I always tell people my configuration, I have to be intentional when I do that fill because like even the rack time that I have that's up, on the left hand side is so when I go do that fill, it had to make sense. So it's like when you're having a conversation, say what you mean what you say, because those particular pieces of the drum, they're not easy to get to. So when I do that, it's got to make sense. And as you know, when we're playing, songs, there's 1,000 fills that you can do. You know what I'm saying? But there's only certain things that's going to make that enhance that song, when you perform it live or in the studio. So I'm just trying to be more intentional on what I do and make it count.
It's cool. The unique drum set adds so much to you being a unique player. I mean, everything you're saying, you really do. And a great way to check this out, by the way, there's, I think it's called 10 Years with DW, which
yes, sir.
Which we're certainly honored when I wear my other hat, but not my drum channel hat, to have you part of the DW team for all those years. And there's a video that's on YouTube. And the funny part about it, when I first saw it, I thought, this is great. He's in his room. Oh, look, over on the wall, he's got these small toms, and he's got the bass drum. That's like part of his room. Then when he started playing the drum set, that was actually part of the drum set. You were playing it in with your fills. I've got to say, you got to add to your long list of accomplishments. You're an inventor. I can attest to that in addition to everything else, because that drum set, not only a musical creation, it's an invention. And I noticed it does something, correct me if I'm wrong, because on the floor toms, or I guess you'd call it a rack tom, but because of the angle of the toms, you play a lot more rim shots than normal guys do. And it's much easier to play rim shots like that, and it's a whole other soundscape basically that you have on your drum set.
Yeah, that's a good statement. And then I added the pancake drum, which is normally used as a gong drum. I remember when you guys came up with that, drummers, they would have it to the side. And I was like, man, how could I change the placement? Because I feel like even with this drum kit, I said I want to have my official first rock and roll drum kit, because back in days when I would see rock drummers, they would have these mega kits. You're talking 2 and 3 kick drums. Shout out to Terry Bozzio. You know what I'm saying? The list goes on. They had these mega kits. And for the first time, I was like, this time when I go on the road, I want to have an official rock drum kit, monster kit. Also bring back the rototoms. I got the rototoms popping. I'm also playing electronics. This is the first time Jack White, in his recordings, he's used samples. So that basically my drum kit, I just want to have all the tools that I need to accommodate. We had to learn almost 100 songs.
Wow.
Talking about the full catalog from the White Stripes, Dead Weather, Rack on Tours, and the solo project. So each of those projects had different sounds, and even with the White Stripes, sometimes they would have a marching drum sound. The dead weather jack we use. So I just like my latest configuration is just in case we play a song from the different catalogs, I'll be able to have the tools, to use. So that pancake, instead of putting it on the side, I placed it in the middle, and that would be really like a floor tom, like the low end sound, because I really needed that sound, and all my other drums are kind of tuned a little bit higher. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, the beauty, I think, is you get, when you hit the tom as a normal tom would be struck more from the top, over the top in your
Yes.
case, it sounds like a tom. And then it does have that timbali crack when you play a rim shot on it.
Yes.
Did you take formal lessons at one point to get your chops together?
No, actually, I learned by playing by ear. Like I started at the age of 4. My mom and dad are both musicians. They play organ and piano in church. So I remember, going to church at that young age. I had a lot of cousins and uncles that played, and it was very inspiring when I would go there. I was like, man, just the instrument being so physical and all the sounds that came, it just inspired me and made me want to pick it up. And at the time I was so short, I had to use a little short um, the school bench to sit on. And then I had another cousin that started playing at the same time. He had one of those junior kits, made by a company, and we would just play that on the other side of the church along with the main drum kit. And then when I graduated, when I got a little taller, I would graduate to the bigger kit. So yeah, I learned by ear, and then eventually, fast forward, late middle school, going into high school, my mom put me in chart reading lessons, but she wanted me to be able to, have that skill. So I just had 1 year of that. It didn't really stick with me, but I did get a chance to do chart reading. But I learned by ear, and I remember at the time it was no YouTube, and we just had to learn how to transcribe what we heard. It was like had to figure it out. It wasn't no cheat codes, and that's how I learned. That's how I learned by ear in church.
A young drummer today pursuing, a career, how he would want to broaden his horizon between just like, I got my chops down, I got my rudiments down, my timing, I have that happening, I got a pretty good feel and a groove. What do I need to add to my arsenal, which is something you've done so well?
Thank you. So I want to say, it's no diss, to each his own. Like if you come up, you learning how to play, how to read with a teacher, it's all good. So it's not one method is better. It's going to make a drummer better or worse, because there's a lot of drummers that don't know how to read, and there's some of the greats. And then there's some drummers that are great readers, and they're killing too. So I say whatever works for you. If you learn how to read, I think you're going to may get a few more opportunities, because they had these situations where you may get added to do a commercial, or you get selected to play, on the film, and they just have charts. They just want you to come ready, read the charts. So the more you know, the more the opportunities that you're going to make. But yeah, I would say the way that I started out, and what helped me broaden my horizons, I remember I came up really strict. I had a strict church background, and we grew up where everything outside of secular, everything outside of gospel music was secular music, and it was a no for us to listen to. Fast forward, when I would go to school, or I would go into these different environments, I would find out about other genres. I was like, man, what's that? What's hip hop? And then I would find out about the jazz drummers, and you know, I had to really go against the grain. But I felt like earlier, especially after watching guys like Steve Gadd and Vinny, how they were genre bendy drummers. They were just not good in one area. They can go from jazz to pop to all the different genres, and I knew early that I wanted to be that type of drummer. So, back in the days when I got exposed to the instructional videotapes, when mom put me in chart reading lessons, cashed out, I would see these instructional videotapes. I got the Terry Bozzio solo drums, and I just was open to finding out about this other world of drummers outside of gospel drummers, because it was very limited. The drummers at the time, it was just a couple of drummers I was checking out that was playing gospel. But when I got exposed to the jazz drummers, you had all these different, Dennis Chambers, Vinny, Weckel, and the list goes on. So I was just open to. I purchased all those instructional tapes, which it helped me to learn about the rock drumming, and I just was open. I wanted to learn this others, style of drumming outside of just playing pocket, and I was just like, wow. there's actually other music that showcased the drummer versus when I came up, the drummer just played behind a choir or a group that was singing gospel. But when I got exposed to the jazz drummers and other genres, the drummers would get a solo and they would, all these other, they got a chance to shine. So that's really what helped me when I started checking out Omar Keem and everybody that was out at the time that went to Berkeley that was performing on these Buddy Rich Memorial concert series, that broadened my horizons. And then when I got exposed to hip hop, I remember just to fast forward, I remember seeing the Roots. That's the group that Questlove is in, and I was blown away that there was a group playing like a machine, like an MPC. You know what I'm saying? I was like, wow. So, it was a dream of mine to become a hip hop drummer, which eventually I became. And then I had a part of my career because I feel like depending on the drummer that you want to be, we all evolve. I had evolution in my career where I was just playing gospel. Then I moved on to play, jazz, and then I also played in a Caribbean band, where it was a percussion ensemble, and I learned how to play all those Caribbean and grooves, and I just noticed that each of those different genres, they all kind of have rules. Jazz was a little bit looser. I think jazz, it kind of combined all of those styles into one, and it was very loose. But I just was open, and I would tell any up and coming drummer, like, if you're used to just listening to whatever style, it might be metal or rock, step out and check out other styles. Like, you could check out hip hop and soul. There's so many genres, Latin music, and just be open to just hearing, just getting the foundation and seeing why they do what they did, and just get the basics. And I think that's what helped me be able to get into all these different circles, because I just learned the basics and I just tried to service the music. So I want to be the drummer. Like, if somebody needed, somebody to play a specific genre, I just want to learn the basics, and then eventually, once I would add my own 2 cents or swag in it. But I would just say to inspiring drummers, just to you know check it all out. Be open to exploring and going outside of your comfort zone.
When you say Daru, everybody's like, oh yeah, he does his thing the way he does his thing. You've built that reputation, and it's been something
Ah,
through the years. I know. Gene Krupa was one of the first to bring the drum set out in front of the orchestra. As you know, that was kind of what he was famous. The first time there was really a drum soloist out there, which opened up the door then for Buddy Rich and Louie and all the luminaries that came kind of behind him. I know Elvin Jones is one of your favorite drummers also. And if you
yes.
talk to kids about Gene Krupa and Elvin Jones, you would think, well, there's two drummers that are so diametrically opposed, like what would one have to do with the other? But musically, and listening to them play, what is it you think young drummers should listen to that they would take away from their playing?
Okay, so for Gene Krupa, he had a lot of showmanship. He's a very animated drummer, and that's one thing that I added to my plan. Not just me being animated, but I actually become the drum. So when I hit that cymbal, I'm becoming the stick and that Pacific drum. So that's what Gene Krupa. He was known for jumping around and just it was having that showmanship that you see on TV, but it wasn't corny. I felt like what he was doing, he felt that, and that's the same thing what I want to convey when I'm playing. When I stand up and hit that, I'm not doing it to be corny. I'm doing it because that's what I feel, and I want the audience to feel what I'm feeling. And I think it's very important, once you start, progressing in your career, to start playing from within and just channeling. I try to everything that I do, I try to come from like a higher place. I try to the same concept like that I had going to church. When you become a believer, you start praying and you connect with the Creator. That's the same thing that I try to do when I'm playing. I feel like for Gene Krupa. Now, as far as Elvin Jones, he plays around the bar line, but it's a lot of colors. It's a lot of colors, and although he's playing behind the bar line, if you put a metronome on, he's still within time. He can be playing ahead or behind the beat, but he just his versatility is unlimited, and the colors and all the sounds that he get on one drum. That's what I try to do too. And when I downsized my kit, I had to figure out the same thing because I didn't have all these other drums to go to. I had to figure out how many sounds can I get on the snare drum, the floor tom, because I was limited. And that's one thing that I took, from Elvin, that he's like just the colors and just the way that he's able to get all those various tones and sounds. You know what I'm saying? It just he sounds like a keyboard player on a drum kit, if that makes any sense. So those are two things that I think drums can take away and just try to listen to the different sound effects. Although he's playing these continuous rhythms, the repetition, it just sounds like he's a trumpet player. It sounds like he's a full band playing drums. If that makes any sense.
I saw him play many times with Coltrane, and that was the camaraderie they had in that quartet was amazing. Where he would actually interact more with the saxophone with John than he would maybe even in the rhythm section with the bass and piano. The way he was able to just go in any direction that he wanted. It all became one sound coming out of four different people, if you will, which is the beauty of having a band be all at one place at one time. One of the things we talk a lot about here on Drum Channel. Yes. And we're having more bands come out, which more than welcome when you come out to do that. Mike Mitchell, we said earlier, he gave you a big hello. He's going to get out here with his band. So we want the kids to really experience what the communication is like when you guys are playing with each other and listening to each other and talking. And the big word out there that I bring up for a lot of the young kids, as it's so important, is funky. I've asked, like, how do you express what that is? And I asked that of James Gatson and Zigaboo, and I was really surprised about their answer. But if a band leader turns around to you and you're in your band and he says, let's do something that's a little funkier, make it a little funkier, what would that mean to you that a young drummer should think in his head, oh, okay, this is where they want me to go?
Oh, wow, that's a really good question. So I'm just thinking, like, if you're playing and you playing really stiff, trying to be a computer, you know what I'm saying? And I'm just thinking, if you're playing a 2 and 4 beat, and there's a lot of space in between that 2 and 4 beat. If you're just going do ta do ta do, but the space in between is so much that can happen in between. I'm talking ghost notes. So it's like do ta do. So it's all the little subdivisions and all of the little ghosting, that Funky Drummer by Clyde Stubblefield, drums by Clyde Stubblefield. Great example, just the nuances, the little ghost notes. I think that's what add that little funk and that flair. And I always tell people, you are what you eat. If you listen to a certain thing, you're going to obviously play. If you listen to a lot of funk drumming, it's going to come out in your playing. So that's why it's great to hear all these other varieties, because what's going to happen by default, you're going to start adding to whatever you're playing. So if you're playing metal, if you're a metal drummer and you also listening to James Brown or that Motown, you're going to automatically breathe that on into the metal. You know what I'm saying? So to make a long story short, to making it funky, just adding those little subtleties and that's the best way I can describe it. Just giving it that stank. You know what I'm saying? That little extra seasoning on top of just playing a stiff beat.
Was there a point at which you just said, hey, I'm me, I'm going to put it out there, I'm going to let it happen, and whatever I've learned is now going to come naturally to me?
Yeah, so basically what I learned eventually that you just got to service the music, and the music tells you what to play. It's like playing on the sports team. Everybody have positions. When you're playing in the band, it's about being a team player. What I've learned is I need to figure out how can I make the bass player sound good. How can I make the guitar player sound good? How can I make the organist? It's a conversation. And it depends on the genre too, because if you're playing behind a vocalist, you're the backing band. So I think a lot of the young drummers that didn't come up or came up at a certain time, if you just go to these sheds and you get your head boosted up like, oh man, you playing the most amazing things. But when it's time for you to play behind a vocalist, you got to understand your role. Your role is not to show what you can do. Your role is to make the person that hire you look good and sound good. So what I've learned is just trying to service the music. And if I'm playing behind a vocalist, what can I play that's going to enhance and not take away? It depends on the genre. Now, if you're playing in a free, like in a jazz setting where that's the music, but it's still, you're still supposed to be having a conversation. It's still not supposed to be all about you. So I just have to figure out how could I just, be in the moment. You know what I'm saying? That's like when you go to concerts, and I'm glad that Jack White did this. We've always kind of had like a no phone policy because we wanted people to experience the show in real time instead of being so worried about having your phone up and capturing it, and so you can show all that you had to show. If you lose that impersonable experience. So as a musician, just learn how to be present in a situation because that magic and that synergy just happen. It's happening in real time, and you never know. Even if you're playing with your band, sometimes you may have it like an emotional day. So that's going to come out in your playing. I think it's very important to monitor how you live and what you do before the stage because that's the energy that you're going to give out in the audience. So if you come, you know, intoxicated or high, that's the energy that you're going to give out to the audience, and then it may even make you play and not be a team player because you're playing, with these additional elements. That's not the raw you. So for me, I'm just, and it's no diss, do what you do, but I just think it's about having a balance, and all of those things are going to either help you get more work, or hinder, your progress.
You said a little bit earlier, you are what you eat. I think that's really important.
Yes, yes, and that's literally real life. Things are different now, and my diet have changed. I'm now, between plant based and vegan, and just trying to switch it up because, as you know, a lot of musicians, I feel like we're passing on before our time due to cancer, whatever it is. So I think drummers, you start young, just try to drink more water, and more, natural fruit juices and all those things, and I think it's going to help the performance, and also you play from like a natural state of mind versus having to get a Red Bull or those other things. But yeah, you are what you eat. So if you eat a lot of snacks, eat a lot of junk, that junk is going to come out in your plan. But if you try to balance it out, it's going to make you feel a lot better. While you're playing, and we want to, as drummers, we want to be able to give 100%. We don't want to be tired after the first couple songs, and that attributes a lot of times to the diet, even exercising. Try to get in the gym or do some walks. All that stuff helps. There's drummers out there that are very athletic. I remember hearing about cats like Donati and cats swimming. You know what I'm saying? But all those things, help you stay active. And I think if you started young, a lot of times we don't think about these things until we get a little bit older. But if we start now, we will have a lot more longevity, and that won't be some of the issues that could stop our progress in our career. So definitely try to just have a balance, and monitor what you eat, and figure out what works with your body. But definitely drink water, and try to balance it out with, with more healthier options. Because we're in a good day now. We're in good times now. Back in the days, vegan wasn't the thing. If you were vegan, you were a nerd, or you got looked at a certain way. But now we have options, and we need to take advantage of that so we can be our best. Another thing, that I want to share with the community is just having some etiquette and respect, for your elders, and just, we have these social media platforms, which could be a great tool if you use it properly, but that don't mean that, if you see something that you don't understand it, you don't like it, you go bully that person or you speak down about it. That person is doing what works for them, or they trying to develop. So, you know, I'm gonna put myself in these shoes. Sometimes the people, they see my drum kit and they judge a book by its cover. They may not even never see me play, or they might not know my background. So they're gonna judge my drum kit without even seeing me play. So, I think it's cool that we have these social media, outlets, but it's not for us to go bashing one another. Don't judge a book by its cover, because I've seen this happen too many times where somebody come in a room and they may they may not look like you, and they get on and destroy the whole room. You know
No,
what I'm saying? So
I can
yo,
guarantee you that the lead singer may get hired because they look really nice, but nobody cares what the drummer looks like. They care what he sounds like. And on the record, you're not seeing whether the drums are in left field or right field. You're just listening to what's going on. And when you play, it sounds perfect. That's what I said at the beginning. Your creativity is beyond just what you play. But when you sit down and play it, you just listen to it. And then when you see it, it's like, oh, maybe this is what brought the feel, or why he went to that tom at that place, or how he gets the rim shot sound. Very, very clever, I guess is the word I would use. Tell me about Rusic Records.
Okay, yeah. So Rusic Records, that's a company, my label, and I basically just took the M off of music and Rusic. Since my name is Daru, I just wanted to, make something that was a little bit different. And a term that I coined with Rusic Records is called soul hop, which is a combination of soul and hip hop. I love soul music. I love hip hop, and I was trying to figure out a way, coming up. Also at a specific time, I was a born again Christian, which, you know, that's a whole nother story. But I'm just trying to figure out ways, how can I bring that aesthetic, that hip hop, where things are, they got that loop and that attitude of playing those grooves. Shout out to Bernard Purdy, all those guys that played on those different breaks. It's a certain, they playing on a one. Like, they mean what they say, and when that groove come back around, you feel it every time. So I wanted to add, that's a part of my style, that hip hop, and then the soul is just playing from your heart and soul, regardless of what genre that I'm playing in. So Rusic Records is the label, and when I became a born again Christian at the time, I was listening to hip hop music, but a lot of the artists that rap, they were very parental. Like, it was a lot of profanity, some of the things that were degrading. And I was like, man, I didn't want to stop listening to the hip hop music, but I just gravitated towards the producers, and I just took a love into them. And then I remember in the '90s when I got exposed to like producers like DJ Premier from Gangstar, Pete Rod, the Bomb Squad. I noticed that a lot of those guys, they were sampling jazz music. And then I would hear like the funky drummer, those different breaks. I was like, I know where that comes from. So I was like, oh man. So that I wanted to, I started producing and becoming a composer, which helped my drumming, as far as just choosing the vocabulary. But I started producing and with that hip hop aesthetic. And then instead of making rap, I fused like soul singers, which I work with my sister Rena. We have a project, Daru and Rena, which is the hip hop grooves with her singing, and the message is a lot more edifying and positive versus listening to the rap where it was just a little bit. They were talking about real things, but it was just a lot of profanity and just the way that they got the message out. I didn't want to have the negative parts that came along with some of the records that were coming out. I was like, how could I take what they were doing but make it edifying? So that's the whole message for Rusic Records. I wanted to be able to have music with that integrity as far as the beats, but have a message behind the music. So yeah, that's just the kind of thing that I wanted to do, with the label.
Congratulations. I think that's much needed.
I'm grateful, and I'm working on my own projects, and that's always a dream of the majority of us, to be able to win. I want to be able to get something with my own works, like that stamp with my own work. So that's what I'm working on, and stay tuned.
Stay tuned a little bit. We're just going to stay tuned and find a little bit more, because you're going to be doing some new things on your own with your own band. Going to get a little bit more out of you on that one. What are we going to see when we stay tuned? Don't give away the show, but you got me interested here. I gotta.
Okay, during the pandemic, which it was definitely a time for us, and my condolences to everybody that lost whatever you lost. Family members. I've lost people too, and it was a time that we've all never really experienced in this lifetime. But I've tried to make the best of it, and I had the opportunity of working on some really cool projects that came out. We're sort of still in the pandemic, but it came out when things started opening up. I had the honor of playing drums on a project with a producer named Pete Rock, legendary Pete Rock from New York. He's a producer from the '90s. He had a group called Pete Rock and CL Smooth, and he started a band called the Soul Brothers. And I had the opportunity of being his drummer and musical director. Pete Rock, he had these instrumental series that he would do called P Instrumentals. He did a volume 1 through 4. And I remember if I'm not mistaken, Pete Rock might have been the first producer that I heard put out an instrumental hip hop project with no vocals. Came out in 2000. And I've been a fan ever since. And it was so cool when I joined Pete Rock's band when he wanted to start performing with a live band. He was like, "Man, this time around, I'm going to do another Peace Instrumentals Volume 3, but instead of doing the samples, I want y'all to go in the studio and replay all my compositions." So during the pandemic, we recorded Peace Instrumentals Volume 3. It came out, I think 2020 or 21. Can't remember the year, but that's one of the projects that I recorded, and I started, playing live shows, whenever something would come about with the band. That was huge that's very huge for my career because Pete is one of the founders of that boom bap, like that '90s. Like he's in the top 5 or 10, that's contributed to this hip hop game. So it was just an honor to work with one of my heroes as far as being a composer. And then another project that I had opportunity of working on that came out, it's a group called 13, and the lead vocalist, which is only one person, his name is Pharoah Munch, and he had a group called Organized Confused. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Pharoah Munch, but he's one of the biggest, as far as what he do, lyricist, he's up there with Busta Rhymes, like he's top. So, Pharoah Munch, his aesthetic has always kind of had a rock and roll type of aggression. If you hear how he raps, and he wanted to do a rock hip hop project. So the name of that group is called 13. It's a band project. Pharaoh is the rapper and he's the producer. And then the other musician, Marcus Machado, plays guitar and myself on drums. It's a trio. We put out a record that came out, and it's the name of that project is called A Magnificent Day for Exorcism. Don't be afraid. Basically, the concept of that specific project, we were basically trying to expose all of the things that we have been dealing with. During the pandemic, a lot of things came full circle. A lot of things that were not fair. All different cultures and climates, and we just wanted to make a project that would kind of expose that and find a way for use music to be an exorcism. To change the narrative. Like the Man in the Mirror. You know what I'm saying? Like the Michael Jackson had that record. So we that music was basically, we were trying to find ways that we can let the message be in the music, and find ways to just change the narrative and show people, how to treat your brother and your sister right. Like you wouldn't want people, you know what I'm saying? So that project is in contributions to that. That's a big project that came out in I recently done a few collaborations. One collaboration project that I did, a producer from the DMV area named Kev Brown. He's another really amazing producer. He's worked with a lot of A-list rappers and vocalists. We have an instrumental project called Daru State of Mind, and that concept of just the title was inspired by Nas. Had a project called A New York State of Mind, and that was Nas' first project, and it's definitely monumental for his career. And the Daru State of Mind was Kev wanted to produce a project with my drum flavor, with that aesthetic. So how that project came about, I started doing these sample packs. I did a sample pack with Loop Loft, which was distributed through Native Instruments. I know you're familiar with the sample pack community. So I gave Kev Brown the sample pack. He went and chopped up my drums, and he made 20 beats. He sent those beats to me, and I was like, man, I want to go back in the studio and play on top. So I went back and played additional drums. To make a long story short, we ended up using my latest drumming because, as you know, when you have drums layer on top of other drums, you get that flangy, that double. So it just worked out with the new drumming that I played. That's one of my favorite projects that I've ever done in my career. It's called Daru State of Mind, and it's featuring Eddie Sancho, who did the mixing and mastering. Now, Eddie Sancho, he's a legendary engineer. He was DJ Premier's engineer for years, and a lot of that '90s with Jay-Z. Eddie Sancho was the guy that was mixing those records. So to get him on this project was an honor. And he did an interview with us, with me and Kev Brown. So there's interludes in between every track. So that's one of the projects that just came out, and it came out through a label called Fat Beats, which Fat Beats is a pillar within the hip hop community. They put out a lot of vinyl records, with a lot of A-list hip hop, guys. So just to put that project on that label was huge. Another project that I put out recently was through T3 from the legendary Slum Village group. Slum Village, that's the group that Jay Dilla was in. We didn't really even get to talk about Jay Dilla, but Jay Dilla, he was known for producing his drums where it was that drunken, stutter, which became a huge influence in all the drummers, the new drummers, including myself, that behind the beat, that Questlove, that drunken style, and that's D'Angelo. But anyway, T3 was the member of Slum Village, and he's the last original living member. And I did a project with him along with Amp Fittler. Amp Fittler was the guy that showed Jay Dilla how to use MPC. So full circle, I actually had the opportunity to play with Slum Village live band when Jay Dilla transitioned in 2006. I got the recommendation, so it was crazy how that project came together. And the title of that project is called A Conet Sessions, Raw Sessions. The reason why it's called a Conet Gardens is an area in Detroit, Michigan, where T3, Jay Dilla, and by 10, the members of Slum Village, that's where they grew up in. And Fiddler is also from that area, so we did it right in that neighborhood, right at Amp Fiddler's studio. So that's a monumental project. I'm so honored to be a part of that. So yeah, I know I gave away a lot.
Aren't you glad I asked for a little? Tell us a little bit more about what's going on, because there's a whole world of things going on inside there.
Oh man,
Daru, I gotta thank you so much. My last quick question is: can you play your ring, or is that just for looks there?
Just for looks.
Can't play it, huh? Okay.
Can't play it.
There you go. You never know. But there's the Daru State of Mind, which you got to get into. Really check out Daru and everything that he's got going. To get a hold of you, the best way is your website?
My website is Rusic Records, RUSIC records.com. And I'm on all the socials as Daru Jones, DARUJONES. And can I plug another thing?
Anything.
So I'm very excited. I did another drum kit with PDP, who's distributed through DW. Is the Daru Jones New Yorker 2. This is the second kit that I've done. The first kit came out in 2017. It's the gold black sparkle fade, and we have a new one that's out. It's the blue fade. The nickname is Nashville Blue, and the whole concept for the nickname, or even the color scheme, by me touring with Jack White, we have a certain color that we will wear on stage. Will be blues, all blues, different shades of blue, and black or white. I was like, man, it would be cool to have a drum kit that I can use, because I knew that I was going to be touring with Jack, because we had been recording. And sometimes even on the first tour, the Blunderbuss tour, Jack, we would do these B shows. There would be random locations, and Third Man would do a tweet, and 30 minutes before the show. So we performed at a gas station, but I just wanted to have a portable drum kit in case we do some of those B shows. And there was a delay with the kit because of the supply chain issues, but I'm glad that it's out now. So Daru Jones New Yorker 2 is out now. And one of my favorite functions on that kit are the Snoms. This new invention that DW made where they combine snare drum with a floor tom, which means each drum have a snare throw. So you have the options of playing either a snare sound or a tom sound. And I had the little 10-inch that could be made into a snare drum. So for drummers like myself that play in the hip hop community, when I'm playing those shows and I'm replaying the stuff that the producers they made, they didn't always use one sound. They had various different drum sounds because they were sampling from the different drum kits, whether it was a Bernard Purdy kit. So I wanted to have a drum. This drum kit will be able to service, like if you wanted to change and play a different snare drum sound, you don't have to just tune your main snare, because that's going to take time. You may get in trouble. Just turn that thrower on, and you have a snare sound on the rack tom as well as the floor tom. So I really like that function. It's out now, and also have Daru Jones DJ and Y drumsticks available via Ahead. Another collaboration that I've done was with Pisces, artist-inspired cymbals. The DJ's 45s. They look like vinyl records, and they all 12-inch. And the concept behind that, when I had the opportunity to go to the factory, which if you're a Pisces artist, it's nothing like you've seen before. It's really cool if you're in Switzerland. But I remember, when I went to the factory, I had the conversation with the team. I was like, it'd be cool to have a drum cymbal set that you could just put in your backpack. Living in places like New York City, or as you know, drummers, cymbals are the heaviest thing in life to carry. When you go into your gig, and sometimes drummers, we go to jam sessions, and then we have an opportunity to play, and then you see the cymbals, and the cymbals are cracked up. So I wanted to have this portable cymbal set that you can put in your backpack in case you get in the jam session situation. Or I actually use these cymbals for these DJ drum gigs that I play, that I've been doing for over a decade now, where the DJ plays with the drummer, and it's just this real tight sound. And Picey, they have this series called PSTX, very lo-fi sound. It sounds like 8-bit, like Nintendo. And those, that specific combination is like the main hi-hat sound. It's that 8-bit. But the ride cymbal is a lot more heavier. And if you switch up the combinations, you can, like, when I put the ride, making the ride as a hi-hat, it sounds like a 14-inch. So I'm thankful that I had that collaboration, because the cymbal, so many combinations that you can do, you're not limited. That is out. It's called the PSTX DJs45s. I have the Daru Jones drum key, which you can get. All of those links are in my bio. I have a link tree, where you can purchase all those products. And then we have these.
Hey, yeah.
Daru plays the breaks live from Layman. It's an audio book, and these are stories where I'm talking about when I had my sessions with Jack, White, Black Milk. I'm telling what we were doing at the time. So it's like me playing a drum break, actually the original pattern that I played on that song, and I'm telling the story on each of the tracks. So this is available right now.
That's a lesson right there by itself, no question.
Man, it comes with an illustration book, and I just became a book author. So the book that comes with here, we actually made into a physical hard copy and soft cover book with the illustrations and all the stories. So that's available. Link in my bio. So that's just a few things, to keep y'all while, I work on other things.
Your credits just get longer and longer. Author, producer, inventor. I'll leave you with my trivia for today. The name Snom came from a great friend of mine since I was a teenager. Jim Keltner wanted to have throw-offs put on the bottom of all of his drums. And he said, yeah, I call them Snoms. That was many years ago. So we did kind of a unique kit for him. Nobody knew kind of how he was getting those sounds a lot for several years. So that's if somebody asks you where that came from, that you know now who that name came from.
Brother Jim, thank you for that. That's a good look. I love that function. Oh, also, yeah, get the Modern Drummer March magazine. I'm so honored to be on the cover.
Yes.
There's some really cool stories. I'm giving some shout outs to a lot of up and coming drummers that's out there, JD Beck, and the list goes on. But I'm very excited to be in their Modern Drummer issue, because that's not a easy accomplishment, but I'm thankful. Shout out to them continuing on that legacy, and get the March edition, the Modern Drummer magazine. Yep.
Yeah, and congratulations. Everything is so well deserved. Thank you very much, Daru, and we're going to see you again soon. Talk to you later. Thank you so much.
God bless. Thank you, Don.